Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. So, you know what we're going to do today? We're probably going to annoy some Halo fans because I am bringing up a fairly controversial aspect of the Halo fandom. And the only reason I do this is not to beat a dead horse, but because I know a lot of my audience isn't as intimately involved in Halo discussions, whether on Twitter or Reddit or YouTube, so you might not know the controversy, although you most likely, if you've played the 343 era Halo games, have some feelings about it. I think it goes without saying that Halo 4 and Halo 5 have not been as well received as the Bungie era Halo games, or at least the first 3 games of the Halo series. Some people like the story direction in Halo 4 especially. I'm not one of those people, and there are some fans of the new Reclaimer trilogy, but there's a lot of controversy. And one of the most controversial aspects is the change of art style. So I'll go into details about what that means in just a moment. I'll give some examples, but if you really don't know what I'm talking about at all, one of my good friends, Hidden Xperia, has done a great video on this, which I'll link below, and he's argued for a return to the classic quote-unquote art style, as have I and many others. But what exactly am I talking about, if you just want to stick in this video? Well, I'm going to interject some of my own personal opinion, but I believe that the first 3 Halo games, and to a lesser extent Halo Reach, had a very unique and defined central art style, which played into world building, character design, and a lot more. Obviously, the games have some differences. For example, Halo CE to me is really special because it's almost like you're playing the cover of an old pulpy science fiction novel. That didn't really carry over into Halo 2 or Halo 3, but what did is the central design themes of the UNSC, the Covenant, the Forerunners, and more. Humanity, at least until the end of the Human Covenant War, is portrayed as an underdog, and this is reflected in most of their technology. The ships are highly utilitarian and almost brutalist. They're basically flying guns. They're not very fancy. They're noticeably less evolved than something like a Covenant capital ship, and they reflect the fact that humanity is much newer to the stars and that their warships are far less advanced. The sort of simplistic ship style, in my opinion, also fits in nicely with the rest of humanity's design aesthetics. Although obviously Halo is set in the future, the UNSC is rocking a lot of technology that looks very similar to what we have. I think that helps ground the series a bit, and it helps make characters like the Master Chief all that more exceptional. Obviously his armor is something that's pretty much unique within the UNSC's arsenal. He's a unique super soldier, and you feel pretty badass when you're fighting alongside these pretty hapless Marines. And again, I think the general principles of the design flow into that, and just from a personal point, subjectively, I think the simplicity, the vibrancy, and just the way everything fits together works perfectly in Halo. And I'm not going to go over every design choice, but the other main factions obviously are the Covenant and the Forerunners. The Covenant have a very unique look, although they are made up of different alien races. The Elites are sort of graceful hunters. They're very powerful. They have a warrior culture. They're muscular and strong, but they're not brutish like the Brutes. Grunts are, well, cannon fodder. While they might pose a threat to the average soldier, one of them is not going to scare you even on Legendary. The Covenant, being a heavily religious organization, favors style as much as substance when it comes to the design of their capital ships, unlike the UNSC, which moved in the exact opposite direction. The Forerunners were an ancient race, almost unimaginably powerful to the modern factions in Halo. I think one way that Halo 1 especially does a great job of showing this is by providing these massive Forerunner structures, which all have these impressive functions but aren't overly complicated. They're incredibly elegant and advanced, and in a way their minimalism almost reflects this. Their megastructures holistically bind together both artificial and natural elements. Both the Ark and Halo rings have massive towers and bridges and command centers and libraries. But despite their grandeur and the incredible functions being performed within, geometrically they're simple, they are uncluttered. It's almost remarkable how little they look like what you sometimes see conceptions of the future looking like. They don't have flashing lights, they don't have floaty bits, they aren't overly complex or neon just for the sake of doing so, and I think all of these aspects really come together to make the Forerunners feel like a uniquely ancient and long dead race. I will always remember the moments of stepping on the Ark in Halo 3 or the Ring in Halo CE because of how they made me feel. The Ark feels like an indescribably ancient place, long abandoned, long gone, and sort of a refuge. But now that I think I've done a good job of describing at least how I see the classic art style, let's look at Halo 4. And since we just talked about the Forerunners, let's move to them first, and then we'll later talk especially about the UNSC afterwards. So we'll acknowledge that there is a supposed lore reason for why Forerunner architecture looks different. I don't care because I like it a lot less in the new games. It basically ignores the key features of classic Forerunner architecture. Look at these towers from Halo 4, or something like the Mantle's Approach, which is the Didac ship. Instead of clean, simple geometry, we see unnecessary angles, detailing for the point of detailing, lighting in weird spaces, and just generally a real busyness with the art style. It's not holistically integrated into the environment, although I do really like the pillars as an idea. And in a tough to describe way, I think it really fails to capture the essence of the Forerunners. It doesn't make me feel like the Forerunners did in Halo CE. And I've read a lot of people say, and I share this idea, that the structures on Requiem or Genesis do not make me feel similar in any sort of way to Halo or the Ark. Part of the problem, I think, is that Halo 4 had to do something to sort of define itself as a next-generation Halo game, although it did come out on the Xbox 360. I think 343 tried to do this by adding more visual, I'll say nuance to everything, which is part of the reason why the Forerunner structures have so much detailing. However, this really takes away from the feel of things, and they would have been better off improving aspects like lighting or textures while keeping the art style their own. And I do understand wanting to define a new art style for yourself as a company, but the problem is 343 wasn't creating a new video game. They were inheriting a much loved series, and in changing the art style, as I'll continue to get to when we talk about humanity, they lose the essence, the visual identity, and more of the game. And they sort of drop, as my friend Hidden Xperia would say, the iconic look for something of their own creation. The problem too is that much of 343's designs have been, and it's hard to call it anything else, but generic. I think the best example of this would be humanity, even more so than the Forerunners. We talked about humanity's distinct visual style, and I think for one, the Infinity sort of carries that forward, while also giving it an appropriate feeling of being advanced given the end of the war, while other ships like the Forward Unto Dawn and the new Strident frigate are just kind of generic. And I think the root of the problem is that 343 wanted to show an advancement of ships, but in doing so, they didn't advance things as they logically would within the Halo universe. Rather, they looked to what we would expect to see advancements in technology manifest as. So with the Forerunner, instead of staying the course, instead they added things like floaty bits and blinking lights and lots of really bright colors, and with the UNSC, they kind of did the same. I see ships like the Vindication class battleship, and it no longer screams UNSC to me. That could as much be a warship belonging to humanity in the Independence Day sequel, for example. Thankfully, they have toned some of it back, but as an example, they straight up changed the Forward Unto Dawn, which was a Charon frigate in Halo 3, to a brand new design. I'm not sure why, but I think that shows a prioritization of visual change beyond anything else. Similarly, my friend Templin Institute did a good video on how the UNSC's new logo, while being far more complex visually than the old UNSC logo, really misses the nuance and is far worse overall. The design changes around the Marines and plenty of other things too, they just make no sense. When you get to the Covenant, I think the new design choices there really take away from Covenant aesthetics as well. Elites look far more feral than they should, it sort of lacks the majesty, and grunts just look really odd as well. I think visual identity for games like these are really important, especially in mainline games of a long-running series. It helps it feel grounded in the universe, and especially where 343 was taking over from Bungie, I really think they should have relied on the visual design choices made that we had really loved. I mean, no one was complaining about Halo's designs, with maybe some complaints about the UNSC being a little too generic and Master Chief being a bit too much of a space marine. But this is important to me because Halo Infinite does look to be returning to the classic art style. We see Chief back in his old armor. Hopefully other Spartans will look less like Power Rangers as well. And I think if 343 does this right, we do have to give them some credit. I think given the potential that they inherited, 343 as one of the roughest starts of any game studio, and they've made several major errors with Halo 4 and Halo 5 in my opinion, as well as the mishandling of the Master Chief collection. So I think we've been right to hold their feet to the fire about things like art design or moving away from classic gameplay. But two, as we learn more about Halo Infinite, which I think we will soon, if they do right by us, then we should give them credit. However, a return simply to Master Chief's armor doesn't really represent a return fully to the classic art style. I feel okay about what I saw with the Forerunner Tower and whatnot, but I just think we have to be intelligent as consumers and fans of a franchise. I want to see Halo move its way back up to the top, or at least as high as it can get, and it can only do that by being the absolute best version of itself possible. So make your voice heard. Don't be mean, don't call out 343 employees or bully people or dislike people who like the game or anything like that, but be out there, politely discuss with people like I tried to do in this video, and let me know what you think down in the comments. But that's all for now, guys. Sorry for re-inflaming this war most likely. Hope you have a good one. Until next time, may the Force be with you.